Welcome back. Today I'll be talking about page layouts and left to right page formatting for your comic book, or right to left formatting, basically how the book reads, how it flows. And for example purposes, I'll be using my book Omega Ronin, issue number 1, so maybe you'll watch this video and find it informative or entertaining. If you read the book, you can look back in time and see where it all started, because what I'm doing now is I'm taking my storyboards and my sketches and my rough page layouts and my writing and assembling them into a rough book. To get a sense for how the whole thing fits together and just how it looks when you open it. And then I'm going to work that out and start putting the time into finishing work, because finishing takes the longest time, the most time. If you're finishing a book, you're working on all the details, and it can take forever. You don't want to spend time finishing a book before you're done actually laying it out and working on the storyline, because as important as the art is, the story is still the most important part of your book. Sometimes, maybe, usually, what do I know? Anyway, let's get started with Omega Ronin. Alright, what you're looking at here is a page from Omega Ronin in the sketching and storyboard phase. Actually, we're kind of pretty deep into the process here. The original sketch looks like that. Let's take off that layer. So this is like the original storyboard, where, and this is how I work. This is very subjective. You may work totally different. But how I work is I start out with the idea and I sort of scribble down my notes while I'm drawing it. And I write and draw at the same time because I view these things like movies, like I'm storyboarding it. And I've done storyboarding work before in the past, so I guess that's part of the reason this is how I think. But I go through and I write my little notes up here, write that, and this page doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but then I go through the next layer and start to refine things. Actually, I put together a space layer there, and you can see I have some guidelines here in Procreate, which is a nice feature. I'll show you that later. Here's some more text dialogue, and yes, my handwriting sucks. But the thing is, I generally don't really need to read it. It's more like I look at it and remember what I was thinking, so that's what's important to me. It's a great page. So when you read the finished book, here's where this sketch started, by the way. I love this page. Or that panel there. Anyway, okay, let's move on. I'm really excited about this book. I love this one. So here's the page, but I don't see it in the book, okay? So what I'm gonna do is even before this page is done, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna shuffle it off. And I use Creative Cloud, but you can just use like a hard drive or one computer or whatever. I'm gonna take it and shuffle it off to Creative Cloud and then suck it into InDesign. And that's where I'm gonna actually get to see my book before I complete it, so that I can read it before it's done. It's like Spaceballs. I guess a lot of you probably have no idea what that is these days. It's the best movie ever made that isn't RoboCop or Predator or The Empire Strikes Back. There's a short list. Here's the beginning of Omega Ronin, and I'm not going to give away any spoilers here, but once again, this process is totally subjective. Like, what works for me may or may not work for you. You probably think about things rationally, whereas I'm, legitimately insane. I like to start my books like they're a movie, and especially when it's the beginning of a series like this one, Omega Ronin. We are meeting, for the first time, like the main protagonist thing. So I think it's important that there's just like a big splash page, and then it gets into, normal comic book format. Now I've done a little more work on these pages than some of the other ones I'll show you in a moment. It's actually doing a lot of Procreate experimentation with digital effects for space stuff. But anyway, I'm writing this one, it's heavily inspired by 70s science fiction and comic books. For the purpose of our story, everybody imagine Orson Welles is reading this. For the purposes of our story, let's give it a name. I can't do his voice. He's got the best voice. Well, he had the best voice. Anyway, for rough draft purposes, and maybe I'll change this by the time you actually read the final book, we're calling this thing the Terror. Because damn it, the Nothing was already taken. Calling it the Terror, which I may or may not change. I don't know. It actually doesn't even matter what this thing is called. It's just like, you figure there's like a billion alien tongues, and it's just like, it's what we're gonna call it in this story. But these are my page layouts. So it's hard to say what's right, what's wrong. This is what I did. There it is. Let's move on to some of the other pages where I start to get into more of the rough artwork. So the Terror basically just shows up and kills things indiscriminately. And that's very important to know that the most powerful race of, here we go, the most powerful civilization in the universe gets wiped out by the terror in like moments. So, you need to know that that's what we're up against here. While these pages may or may not be a little more complete, these certainly are not. So I sketched this stuff in Procreate, and it was actually just this morning I started to assemble them, and I'm loving the way it's looking at the moment. But I ended up changing like a couple panels over there. I forget which page it is, but I took one page and like swapped it with another one, just to make the left to right reading experience better and frankly just look cooler. Two very important things. Looks cool, reads good. Alright, another thing that I do in this phase is I work out the word balloons, I arrange the word balloons in the text to fit the panels, and this is just placeholder text. Yes, I spelled absence wrong. This is like the first time I'm actually reading this, because I'm an idiot and there's no spell checking in Photoshop. So here's one of the great things about InDesign. I'm not sure if you can tell on the camera. I just right-clicked that, and I'm going to open in Photoshop. It immediately opens the page that I'm looking at in Photoshop. I'm working on the trackpad here, which I never use. Go over to the T tool. Stuff all goes through QA anyway, but boom, pockets of absence. I want to keep going. Oh yeah, here we get to the really rough storyboards. But again, I took this stuff, I put it in the book, and I'm reading it, knowing let me put it this way, it's helping me set the direction that I'm going to draw it. So you take your rough sketches, whether you're working on pen and paper, crayon, Clip Studio, I'm not sure, I don't think Procreate gives you quite the tools for this, but Clip does, or Photoshop InDesign. Look at your book and just become familiar with it before you spend a whole hell of a lot of time with it later on. I know what this is going to look like. You probably have no idea. So I made some changes to these things. And because of the way that these two pages worked out, there's a splash page here, which then sets the, I don't want to show you any of the secret stuff. Although you've already seen like the cover of the book, it kind of gives a little bit away, but or what is roughly going to be the cover of a book. But this is my process. I know it's half-baked at best, but half-baked is great for creativity, not so much for finishing. So spend a lot of half-baked time, creative time, having fun with your book, no matter how short or long it is, working out your doodles, working out your sketches. Again, I also want to go in there and like add a little hoses and stuff, but I want to know what the damn page looks like and feels like before I spend hours going in there and drawing thousands of little hoses. Because for a project like this, I can't just repurpose all of these shots and make t-shirts out of them. Like, that's sort of a standalone drawing. So it's got, if I'm going to spend the time to do it, it's going to be in the book and you're going to read it and it's going to be good and you'll hopefully come back for more. So see you next time on Drawing with Lord Karnage. Happy drawings! And hopefully this helps, or at least it's been interesting. I've had fun.